Welcome to Wine Club. This is the playlist where I drink good wine while I whine about bad books. And today's offender is Shiver by Ali Reynolds. Fair warning, there are going to be spoilers in this review. Also, like I say in all my reviews, this is solely about the book, not about the author as a person. I'm sure she is lovely. So let's go ahead and see what the book promised. When Milla accepts an off-season invitation to Les Rochers, one of France's most exclusive ski resorts, she's expecting a weekend of catching up with 4 old friends. Though she hasn't seen them in a decade, she's never forgotten the bond they forged on this very mountain during a winter spent fiercely training for an elite snowboarding competition. Yet, the moment I'm probably going to say it 6 different ways during this review, Yet the moment Milla and the others arrive for the reunion, they can tell something is wrong. Inside the deserted ski lodge, an icebreaker game awaits, designed to draw out their secrets and to remind them of Saskia, the enigmatic 6th member of their group, who vanished the morning of the competition years before and has long been presumed dead. Stranded in the lodge, with a looming snowstorm making escape impossible, Milla realizes there's no one on the mountain she can trust, because someone will stop at nothing to find out the truth about Saskia, and if Milla's not careful, she could be the next to disappear. So I've had this book sitting on my, to buy if I find it list for quite a while. I was really excited about it. I mean, look at that cover. That cover is very promising. And I will say, the book gets right into the story. There is very little setup, which I'm surprised caught me off guard, and I'm not sure why it didn't work for me. It kind of just felt like the story had an abrupt start, and I don't know the main character. This is the exact opposite of what I talked about with How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix, where that took forever to get going, and I complained about that. But this was almost too quick to get into it. I want a happy middle where I can get to know the main character, and we're not just living in their life for days on end. I don't know. I really don't know. It's a small thing, but it kind of just interrupted my reading experience with this book because I didn't know these characters, and yet, okay, we're starting the story. Here we go. So not only did I not get to know our main character before the action started, I didn't get to know any of the other key players in this supposed locked room mystery. We have Milla, our MC, her crush, Curtis, his evil sister, Saskia, which, side note, is it just me or are those weird names for siblings? Saskia sounds so posh, and then there's Curtis? Curtis? Moving on. We also have Brent, a friend of Curtis's and Milla's love interest in the past, Heather, a sexy lamp, and her husband Dale, an alien pretending to be a human. And then Odette's presence is there in the now, but a lot more prevalent in the past. So we know right off the bat that Saskia is presumed dead, and we know one of them is paralyzed, which turns out to be Odette. The truth of what happened to both Odette and Saskia comes to light during this reunion. So I didn't love the choices that these characters were making. Right off the bat, they're invited to play this icebreaker game in this remote building, but they have to leave their phones in a basket, and they just do it, even though they don't know who organized this activity, and, nobody's copping up to it. What? Are you kidding me? You're in a remote place, and there are no other people around? Why the hell would you put this phone in the basket? No, just no. And then the characters just continue to make dumb and illogical choices. And it's not just their choices, too. It's their obsessions and their thoughts. Milla is carrying a torch for Curtis, and there's this huge focus on Milla and her crush on Curtis, and then her relationship with Brent in the past. There's a ton of time spent on Milla pining after multiple men in this book. I wanted a thriller. I didn't need to read about how excited she is to be next to Curtis. There's this focus on how Milla, also don't need no man and is angry about feminist issues. but it just felt kind of hollow to me. Like, Milla kind of came across as the stereotypical, not like other girls, where she's the main character, and she's not like other girls because she snowboards. She's tough. She calls women females. She refuses to let people help her, and she must, simply must, win everything. From a small argument to beating Saskia at her own game. Why, though? Why? Why? Like, speaking of why am I reading this? Why am I reading this about her begging for guys to kiss her and taking her top off when she thinks Saskia is playing mental games and trying to torture them and wants to kill them? This is not the time to be getting amorous. Milla is so fixated on men when there are bigger fish to fry, girl. Milla just reads really young in both timelines. Like, even in the present, when she is a fully fledged adult, she reads like a YA character. She also jumps to like crazy conclusions and is always thinking like, I can't trust anyone. And then the next chapter she's trusting people but saying she can't and saying she's figured out who's behind it. But then they're not, and then she casts her suspicions on someone else. And it's just a rinse and repeat cycle. Like, there's a point where she even considers that Curtis killed his sister and is still all, well, why doesn't he look at me? Why doesn't he kiss me? What would have happened if I'd gone into his bedroom instead of Brent's 10 years ago? Girl, you were about to die. Like, can we think about bigger things here? All in, I didn't like the cast of characters. Like, Heather's a bitch for seemingly no reason. Dale reads like he was invaded by a body snatcher in those 10 years between the two timelines that we're reading about. And I didn't really like Milla either. Like, both Curtis and Brent are simps for her, and then one of them just really gets the short end of the stick in how she treats him. Saskia is unlikable, but at least she was written to be horrible. Like, we're not supposed to like her. The book really starts off with a bang, and then whimpers along in the middle. The book drags on a bit longer than it needed to, and some scenes should have been condensed or cut as they get repetitive. Milla snowboards. Milla tries to one-up Saskia. Milla hooks up with a guy. Repeat. Then in the present, we have them trying to figure out like how to get out of the lodge and like wondering who's messing with them. Thrilling. So, time for the big reveal, TM. Has Saskia been alive this whole time? Has she been waiting 10 years to exact her revenge? No. Odette, who broke her neck, is the one who's behind this. Dun dun dun. What? Like, I'm not a doctor, obviously, but is that possible? Like, I'm not intending to be offensive at all. I'm, like, seriously curious. Like, if Odette would be able to not only walk again 10 years later when they say she has a C2 fracture, but also be a competitive skier and on her way to the Olympics? I didn't mind Odette being the one behind it, but I also feel like it's not plausible it could be her. Plus, it just so happens that her brothers work for the resort where she was injured years ago, and her brothers happen to answer the phone when Curtis calls to plan this trip, as he's the one who originally organized it, not with all the other stuff, and then Odette hijacked it and turned it into her own game to find out what happened to Saskia. And what happened to Saskia? Everyone was ready to kill the bitch. Milla drugged her with sleeping pills, and then Brent pushed her on an icy sidewalk and dragged her inside his apartment. Instead of getting help, Heather smothers her with a pillow, and then they fold her like a pretzel and put her inside her snowboarding bag. Then they take her body on the lift onto the top of the mountain, and while Heather and Brent are looking for her, because Curtis asks if they've seen her, Curtis kicks her bag down the mountain, not realizing that she's in it as payback for when Saskia pushed Milla's snowboard down the hill. Everyone had a hand in her death. There's also this really weird thing at the end, like the entire then storyline focuses on Saskia and Milla basically singing the anything you can do, I can do better to each other. Fine. We find out that Saskia and Odette are romantically involved. Fine. Then to try and get Saskia to break, Milla brings her back to her place and kisses her, and then they hook up. I did not see it coming, and I didn't see it coming because Milla never expresses an attraction or sexual or romantic interest in Saskia. It really felt like it was just thrown in for the shock value because we never find out that Milla's bisexual or that it meant anything. Like, it was there as a twist and like to get the setup, but Milla was sleeping with Brent and had a huge crush on Curtis, and then Milla never even tells Curtis about this. She has sex with him and never tells him that she also banged his sister. Like, Brent is the one who reveals this secret. Like, girl, sort out your priorities. So we find out Odette is the big bad and kills Heather and Dale and Brent. But like, Curtis and Milla get away. Brent, who actually cared about Milla while she didn't really care about him until it was way too late, Brent sacrifices himself to save Milla. Don't do it, my boy. Again, I don't get how Odette is doing this. Like, how is she so crafty that she can sneak around this, like, remote lodge that, from reading it, doesn't seem like it's really big, but she's able to sneak around without being seen, has time to set up all these cameras and recorders, and can plant evidence in people's rooms, and she's never seen or heard. Like, was she going to the bathroom in a bucket? Like, they do reveal that she has, like, a fridge in her room, but still, like, nobody heard her. Nobody ever saw her running around. Well, I guess one character does see, like, a flash of white hair, and they think it's Saskia because Odette is so fucking crazy that she basically becomes the spitting image of Saskia. I don't know. I will say I was interested in the snowboarding aspect. I'm a skier myself, and I appreciated her talking about her training, her time on the slopes, and the injuries that can happen when people aren't careful. If you're hitting the slopes this winter, please wear a helmet. The setting and atmosphere was also well done. I do wish I had a clearer picture of the building they were staying in, because sometimes it got confusing with like how this whole place was laid out. But overall, I loved the like cold and creepy feelings I got while I was reading this. I will say I preferred the then timeline more than the now timeline. It felt like more was just going on, which does make sense, but I thought those sections were better written. All in, I am going to give this 2.5 to 3 stars if I'm being generous, as it was well structured with the dual timeline, but the dialogue, especially around the romance elements, was cringy as hell, and I wanted more action. I wanted more I know what you did last summer vibes, but with like a wintry backdrop. I don't hate this, I just had higher hopes and they were not met. I'll definitely comb through reviews before checking out another read by Reynolds, but again, didn't truly hate this, it wasn't what I was expecting, wasn't what I hoped for. So tell me, what wintertime, locked room, ski chalet, or isolated hotel books have you read that you really loved? Share your recommendations in the comments below, as I'd love to check them out. Otherwise, I'll see you next time at Wine Club.